Everyone, welcome to New Slang. This is episode 117. I am your host, music journalist Thomas Mooney, and we close out the week by talking with singer-songwriter Tennessee Jet. TJ has an excellent new album called The Country coming out tomorrow. That's Friday, September 4th, if you're listening way in the future or something. I really enjoyed this one with TJ. One of the things that you have to get past when you're doing these interviews, especially on the phone, is breaking past that initial awkwardness of meeting a new person and trying to get past all of that, for lack of a better phrase, the bullet point answers. I refrain from saying it's going on like autopilot or something, because typically the answers are still really well thought out. But as a journalist, you come to a point pretty early on when you realize and have to be aware that these artists you're talking with, they're doing 10 interviews about this album. And if they're on tour, maybe they're doing 10 of those in one day with local newspapers as well. So obviously, yeah, it's super understandable why an artist will use those go-to answers. It's interview fatigue. And that's one of the main reasons why I've tried to make New Slang an hour-long interview, is because you're able to typically work past all of those bullet points. You're able to work past the small talk and really dive into what really matters about a record. And of course, this is all really just to say that with TJ on this one, it was like instant. We were just kind of working on the same wavelength the entire time. I had dug a lot of the songs from this record before we spoke, but it's always a great thing when after you speak with an artist about their songs and their craft, you find those things that they were mentioning in the songs when you listen to them again. And that's what I have felt talking with TJ and about this album. A lot of the songs on The Country, they're road songs. You kind of feel that hum of the adjacent interstate highway or the farm to market 2-lane. You feel TJ and company shaking off that frost as they come in from the cold or wiping their brow from the summer heat. It's never in that blatant, I'm a lonesome, road-weary rambler kind of way, but these songs are really built from a life on the road. Obviously, as a touring musician, TJ is often on the road, and then of course he also mentions how his parents were on the rodeo circuit. So as a kid, he was constantly on the road as well, and I think that has just kind of ingrained how he writes songs. And sonically, this record is really traveling as well. If you bear with me for a second, if country music was like a superhighway or something, each of these songs is like a pit stop or an exit. You kind of have like Outlaw Avenue and Bluegrass Boulevard, Honky Tonk Highway, and Singer-Songwriter Alley, and so on. And while he does make these little pit stops, again, like it's all part of the same kind of connective tissue, that common thread. So you don't feel like anything is really way too far out or is out of place. It all just feels so natural. I highly encourage y'all to check out The Country tomorrow. It's a good one. And the way it closes with a song called Sparklin Burnin Fuse is just perfect. Today's presenting sponsor is Desert Door Texas Soto. If you know anything about me, it's probably that I'm from the heart of West Texas and absolutely love everything about West Texas. And that's really why I love Desert Door so much. You may be asking yourself what exactly Soto is. Well, it's a premium spirit that's similar to a tequila or a mezcal, but for my money, it's a little bit more refined and smooth. There's a sweetness and faint hints of vanilla and citrus, and it's also as versatile as your garden variety vodka. At its core, Desert Door is authentically West Texas. They go out and harvest Soto plants from the wild and bring them back to their distillery over in Driftwood, Texas. So next time you're at your local liquor store, get a bottle of Desert Door. For more info, check this episode's show notes. If this is your first time listening to New Slang, I strongly suggest hitting that subscribe link. If you just did, I'm giving you a virtual high five right now. New Slang is over on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and basically any and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Go check out the New Slang merch store, grab a koozie, some stickers, buttons, and magnets. Any bit helps. I'll throw a link into the show notes. And if you're into playlists, go check out Tom Mooney's Cup of Coffee and the Neon Eon playlists over on Spotify. The Neon Eon is for all your nostalgic 90s country needs, which there's going to be more Neon Eon related stuff coming your way pretty soon. And then Tom Mooney's Cup of Coffee is a regularly updated mix of new Americana and country music. It's also a really great hint at who I have coming up on the podcast. So, yeah, go follow those. Okay, I think that's enough for the show notes. Here is Tennessee Jet. Just going to start off with, you have this new record coming out at the beginning of September. What, I've been asking everyone this, I feel. What has, like, this year, has that made it everything change plans for you as far as, like, the releasing schedule? Did you originally have it coming out earlier, or is this kind of like what your plan was all along?
Well, once the record's been done since earlier in the year, and so when we were looking at release schedules, yes, the Corona thing definitely made us reevaluate the timing. It ended up being whether we would want to wait until things blow over, which hopefully they will sooner rather than later, or put it out and weigh the pros and cons. I think that for the music that I make, I'd like people to digest the songs as a collection. And if you're in a typical world, meaning not a crazy pandemic, then a lot of times the singles have a certain importance because you've got so little time to make an impact. There's just so little, people's attention spans these days are so short. So you might structure when you put a single out to get maximum impact, with meaning maximum people just to hear it so they can hopefully connect with it. And with Corona, I think that there's more people that probably may have time to sit back and actually absorb things because they're at home more. There's not as many things vying for their attention. They're obviously not going to live shows. Mm-hmm. And so I think in this way, it hopefully will end up being an advantage putting it out in the middle of this. And so people can hear every song. We're really happy about every song on the record, and they all do a different thing. This record was about the types of country music that I love and miss. I think country music can be pretty broad so long as there are certain key elements to it. And one thing being story, and just a story of common people living their lives. And Saturday night and Sunday morning, I think now on radio, at least terrestrial radio, every time that I turn it on, it seems like it's kind of 3.5 minute commercial after 3.5 minute commercial. And it's all just Saturday night and it's party and it's that thing, And I really miss great country songs and just a certain perspective. I miss a female perspective that you just don't hear anymore on radio. I miss stories and songs. I miss real instruments and real performances. And I hear a lot of other people say the same thing, shows and just talking to people. A lot of people, they don't even listen to terrestrial radio anymore. If they have Sirius, they're great because they can dial in more what they're looking for. But so I wanted to make a record that just embraced my love of country music of all types. So there's a song that's 60s country, 70s country, 80s, 90s. There's a bluegrass song. There's an Americana song. There's alt country, just to show how broad it can be and that it doesn't have to be bro country, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that's really easy to say is that, we're this record or whatever record, not necessarily specifically even let's talk about this record, but like this record is going to be about all these different kinds of country and like it's so different and vast and far apart and it's a little bit of something for everybody. But with your record, like it feels like, you said like, hey, there's a bluegrass song. There's like Johnny, that's kind of even more of like
it's the alt country song.
Yeah. Like there's all kinds of different things, but it doesn't feel like there's still like that common thread that runs through that I felt tied them all together. And sometimes that feels like we lose that point on, there's all these different things you can say and all these different ways you can play, but still there is that common thread that can there's a lot more in that these songs have in common than not have in common. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And
think
I like
so.
that about.
The country's one of those genres that, I grew up, my parents rodeoed. And so the first things I was hearing in the truck, I never rodeoed, but I just was just along for the ride. Well, my parents, my mom was a barrel racer, my dad's a bronc rider. And so they were playing, George Strait, Willie and Waylon and Conway Twitty and Hank Williams. Just like that, I got a great kind of education, it's just been kind of imprinted into my brain very early on. And then, of course, you go through a period where you go, okay, well, now I'm going to kind of like, get into my kind of music, and so you go and you just whatever is kind of like the most opposite of that. You kind of rebel in a sense, and then you kind of figure out like what you really like and what you really appreciate about what you had been exposed to early on. And so for me, there's always a country element, a country thread, and I just kind of know it when I hear it. At least for me, I mean, everyone's perspective is different, but for me, it's just a sense of sincerity and truth. I think that Merle Haggard is as great a songwriter as there's ever been, or Dolly Parton, and I don't consider them any different than Bob Dylan. I think they're all great and they're all very different, but there's a sincerity and a truth to it. I think ultimately a great song is just a folk song. It can be played by all sorts of different types of bands, and it can be played in different ways, different time signatures, but a great song is just going to last. And so for me, country music just has that sense of sincerity and accessibility. And at the same time, it's broad ranging depending on the region that you're pulling from, like the cover of She Talks to Angels on the record ended up being the bluegrass song on the record, or the, hillbilly music, or however you want to, call it. But it's just as country as, Hands on You, which is more like the 90s, West Coast type inspired country song. So I just love that diversity. It's hard for me to kind of stick with one thing that's so specific. Some people will put a record out, and it literally every song sounds like it's 1960s country, it sounds like an early 70s Don Williams record or something, and it's awesome. I can love it. For me though, I end up just always wanting to like veer in a different direction, and so for me, it's usually keeping the train on the tracks as opposed to, just enjoying the ride. And so this record is an attempt at kind of keeping it as consistent as I can. But even within that, there's going to be a song like Johnny, which is, totally different than, the rest of the record. So,
yeah. Like you talk about like that sincerity in a song. That is one of the things that me and one of my friends always talk about is like right now, for some reason, one of the big major things that people talk about is the authenticity of a band. And like that's up for debate. And my whole thing is more like that's not necessarily even like the bigger point of music or of judging a band. Like I want to judge a band off of their genuineness. I don't care necessarily, like a little bit of authenticity goes a long way. And like being genuine in the song is like the most important aspect of someone's career. And
I agree.
I feel like that's like, you can hear that genuineness in a lot of really great records coming out lately. And of course, like I'm saying, like this record right here, I can hear that genuine, like you're diving deep into these songs and like trying to find what needs to be said and like what these characters are saying and the different aspects of yourself in these songs, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's the important part of
yeah.
music.
Well, man, thanks for saying that. Yeah. It's interesting because so you'd be a connoisseur in the, you dig into the, the depths of these things because just to do a good job for what you do, so, but it's interesting because you can see it, I can have like some, fan that's had, 3 shots too many come up to me after a show. And when they're talking about what they love, a word that they always use is like, I just like it because it's real, and they're kind of saying that same thing. I think they're saying that they like authenticity too. And it becomes kind of a word that gets overused. It's like, what do you like in music? Well, I like music that's real. It's like, well, what does that mean? Real good, real bad? What does it mean? But I think that we're all wanting the same things. And I don't think that it necessarily takes someone that can really talk nuance to understand that. Although, if you can really get deep into it, then it's definitely you could maybe express it better, I guess would be the way to say it.
Yeah. I have this weird, I guess, thing with fan bases in general, or like just the general public, because on one side, yeah, like I feel like I listen to music, I talk about music, I read about music like 24/7. That's what I do. And I know like a lot of artists do that. And that's why people would tune into a podcast like this. But also at the same time, like the average person just doesn't have enough time to do like this kind of like, I guess, intel on a song or an artist, or think about it, because they got soccer practice and they got a real, like I say, like a real job, but a little bit more demanding job, I guess. And but also at the same time, like I guess that confliction is like, I always still think that we maybe underestimate what an audience can get out of a song.
I totally do. And I ran up against this a lot whenever, we just moved back to Oklahoma, but we lived in Nashville for, a handful of years. And when you're out there, you want to get some songs cut. You think like, well, hey, I'm going to pitch some of these songs, and you go take them to people. And one of the weird things that people would say, like, man, that is a great song. I love that song, but I can't get that cut. And it was always such an interesting kind of term, because you're thinking, well, isn't the point writing great songs,
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really. It's writing a certain type of song more than anything. And nowadays it's really, truly writing more of a certain type of commercial. And so it's like when they say commercial music these days, they mean literally commercial after commercial after commercial. And when I kind of reached the point where it was just like, look, you can either get really bitter about that, or you can just say, look, this is that world. So do you want to live in that world? Do you want to kind of, because there's a skill in writing those types of songs too. It's just not the world that I want to live in. I really would prefer to paint portraits as opposed to houses. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like, you just got to at some point kind of come to that conclusion of like, well, what type of songs do I want to write? Because you can, the funny thing though nowadays is, even if you do write those types of songs that get cuts, the money's just not there. It's not really even, there's no money in selling out in that town, really. So for me, that wasn't a deciding factor, but it certainly kind of took away some of the like caring whether you had a cut or not. There's still some out there that are great, but for the most part, a lot of these songs are written by, the last Sam Hunt song, I think, had 9 writers on it.
Right.
And so it's like, you can say like, hey, I got a number 1 song. It's like, well, yeah, you got 1/9 of a song, and because you don't have your publishing, you have 1/18 of a song, and you're paying back your draw, which is terrible anyway. So it's like, what are you really doing, and what are you moving forward? And are these songs that are going to stand the test of time? Are you writing Jolene or Gentle on My Mind, or are you writing something that no one's even going to remember in 2 years? So what are you really doing? And so it really kind of became a point of, kind of a head scratcher. You play these songs for people, important people that can get these songs heard, and they just kind of look at you like a dog looks at a mirror. You're just kind of going, well, maybe Nashville, at least this part of Nashville, isn't quite for me. And Nashville's an amazing place, and I believe the best players in the world are in Nashville, and I believe some of the best songwriters in the world are in Nashville right now. A lot of them are kind of semi-retired, but the better young songwriters out of Nashville right now are females. The best artists, agree. The best young songwriters are, in my opinion, overwhelmingly female, and you're just not hearing them on mainstream radio because, they don't write bro country, because why would they?
I wanted to talk to y'all one more time about our new partners at Desert Door and offer up a handful of my favorite ways to drink it. Get you a Mexican Coca-Cola, have a couple of swigs, then pour yourself some Desert Door Oak aged in, toss in a lime wedge or two, or how about this? Pour some Desert Door into a mug, top off the glass with some ginger beer, squeeze in a lime, or for all you ranch water drinkers out there, get you a Topo Chico, take a couple of pulls off, and then pour in some Desert Door. Toss in a couple of lime wedges, and now you have a mighty tasty and refreshing ranch water. Remember, Sotol is as versatile as vodka and has a more refined, smooth, and a more complex palate than tequila. It's rich and balanced, and whatever your go-to drink is, it'll make it that much better. And again, it's inherently West Texas. It tastes like home. For more info on Desert Door, check our show notes. All right, that's it for Thomas Mooney's Cocktail Minute. Let's get back to the show. Well, this goes back to something I just jotted down here. Is that, so like I'm kind of, I'm obsessed with like 90s country and like that turn.
Oh, me
where
too.
Did that turn? And, a few, I guess, probably about last year, I made a Spotify playlist of every song that was on the Billboard Top 10 from 90 to 99. And just had it as a playlist so I can just put it on shuffle when, just doing stuff. And the big thing that I really, when looking at all those songs from afar, was the big thing that jumped out was like, oh, you know what? These songs are like for adults.
Yes, exactly.
And like, there's a lot of songs that are about adult situations and not necessarily about, like, there's nothing wrong with having like a song about, having a good Friday night, right? Or
no,
good Saturday night.
It's always been country music thing.
It's also like, hey, can I also get that, like, that song about a relationship that's, like, what do you do now? All right. Can I get one of those songs? Can I get a song about divorce or like about losing a family member, or, can that be part of the mix too? And that's like, it feels like that part has been left off radio.
It's totally true. The cathartic element that country used to provide for people, because sometimes the last thing you want to do is hear a sad song. You just want to hear something, you want to turn it up, and you just want to, like, start drinking beer or whiskey or whatever you want to do. But when that becomes a whole thing, then there's this sense of like, well, that's what life is. Life is all this thing. And so it kind of gets depressing in that sense, but when you used to hear songs, when you hear George Jones sing something, or like you hear like one of those, like Alan Jackson, like Someday, or one of those like not great 90s country ballads, then you felt like, oh, other people go through this too. It's like it was music for everybody, and now it's like I don't relate to, like, and I gotta give the caveat, I turn on country radio when I'm just on a long drive and really bored and just want to kind of like get a laugh,
Yeah.
or see if maybe a buddy's got a song there, or see if there's like a song that sneaks on there. Like every now and then there'll be like a Miranda Lambert song, and you're like, that's a pretty fucking good song.
Right.
They're there, but it's just so few and far between. And if you're not in the top, I think I saw a thing where if you're not in like the top 10, like they play the top 10 songs like 70% of the time. So it's really, you're only hearing like the same songs, and usually they're just awful. And so you're just not hearing those things, and you're not hearing a female perspective on things, which I like to hear a perspective that's not mine or from a different point of view. I think a great song is a great song. I think Dolly Parton's a greater writer as there's ever been. And now you're just not hearing them. I mean, you're hearing basically one thing. And I don't really begrudge people for whatever they do to make a living, or whatever they think they got to do to kind of get where they want to get. But when you've had a little bit of perspective and you can kind of see it from both sides, it's just not something that resonates with me, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, like I said, it kind of goes back to that, give the audience a little bit more, the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be able to get it. You know what I mean? Because they've got it before, and you've heard this a million times. Maybe it is from that guy who 3 shots too many after the show.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh, where has this music been all my life? And like, oh, or like, I heard you on, you used Sirius radio a minute ago. I heard you on Sirius, and then after that I got into yada 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 and yada yada, and they stopped listening to the radio and they tapped into this side of music. You've heard those stories a million times. So like, I think like there's still some of that out there. Like you can give the audience some a little bit more respect, I guess.
Substance. Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. And at the same time, I understand when you want to turn the radio on every day on your way to work, or when you're just like out on the lake, and you don't want to like, shuffle through on your phone. You just want to kind of play the radio out of your truck or something. you want to be listening to the same music that all your buddies are listening to. And if that's all they're playing, you're like, well, it is what it is. And you don't really even know what you're missing in that sense. And I don't want that to sound condescending in any way, because I've been in a position where, all I did was listen to, the country radio station, and then moved to LA, lived there for a couple of years where they didn't have a country station, like literally didn't have one. So I was just like, buying different records of, things that I would trying to get into for a record I was working on. And when I came back and turned the country radio station back on, I was like, what is this? And they're like, surely this has changed, right? Or maybe I was just listening to this the whole time. And I was just not resonating. Nothing was resonating with me. And it all just kind of felt like it was just another version of the same song with the same players. And there was just, I used to, these old records, these old Merle Haggard records, and they would use their own band. Mm-hmm. And there was a specialness. When you're hearing a Buck Owens record, it sounded different, than George Jones record or a Merle Haggard record. And there was something special about that. And so now the only place you're going to get that is either in kind of more of the Americana scene in Nashville or in Texas music, where people will like use their own bands. And, I guess it can be anywhere, but it's just outside of the mainstream thing. And I just like that. I just liked hearing different perspectives and in different ways of approaching things. I just think that the same old same is so boring, particularly whenever, we've got at best, like 100 years to live in. And so it's like, you really want to listen to the same song, same way every day. There's more out there.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think that people will. There are songs that I put on records before that I really thought was like, well, this is more for me. Like, I understand what it means. And I realized that, like, this song's multi-layered. I've kind of injected some things into it that, like, you've really got to sit back and kind of like digest and decipher. And I'll have someone walk up to me, like I said, like that guy that's 3 shots too many, and he will nail exactly what that song's about and be like, man, that's my favorite song on the record. And I'm just like surprised. But it just tells me that, like, people are craving substance, and you don't have to be ashamed of writing something that's just not, do re mi. You can really kind of lay it out there. And sometimes the things that you don't understand, I mean, I don't understand every one of my favorite songs, and I'm someone that, like, I study song and songcraft and the history of songs, and I turn them inside out. But you just can't understand a writer's intention on every song, but it doesn't matter because it means something to me. Go try to dissect a Bob Dylan song and say, like, definitively, this is what this song is about. And it's like, well, if that's what it's about to you, then you're exactly right. That's what the song's about. But it may have been nothing that Dylan wanted it to be about, But once you write the song and put it out there, it's not really for you anymore.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting right there, is that once even if you just play it for someone in your living room, like, once you play it, like, you kind of give up ownership, or partial ownership in a way, and it's open for interpretation. What I always love is whenever you're able to hear a song and it changes over time for you. At one point, like, you hear a song and you're like, yeah, that's good. Or you've heard it a million times and you really like it or whatever. And then one day, because you've gone through some other life experience, you're like, oh my God, like, okay, that's what this song's about. Or at the moment, at least, I don't know. That's what.
So what do you think? So what do you think is better? Like, a better record? The record that you hear the first time and it just resonates with you and you love it and you listen to it for a year and then don't really ever listen to it again? Or a record that you don't really get the first time and then a couple of years later you listen to it and it kind of knocks you out and then it just becomes something you kind of like live with,
The latter. I love, like, I already have like a couple of records that pop to mind. So, like, one of my favorite bands.
What are those records? I'm curious.
So, like, one of my favorite bands is The National, and every record, or not every record they've put out, but like Boxer, and then like I can't think of what the name is. The one with Anyone's Ghost and the follow up. Those records, like, when I first heard them, I was like, okay, this is all right. Maybe not as, like, genius as I thought they were going to be, or like that I was told they were supposed to be. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm starting to really, like, unfold the record, and I'm starting to really get what they're talking about. And then the other record, and initially I did like it, but I've loved it so much more as time has gone by, and that's the last 2 War on Drugs records.
I got to get into those guys. Someone was mentioning them the other day. Yeah, I have a problem where I only listen to like the same things over and over, and I don't get out as much. I'm usually, the only new music I hear is like friends' music when they put it out, because I'm usually either my head's more into like cinema or just like the stuff that I always listen to. I feel like sometimes it's easy to get, especially if you're working on a record, I almost don't want to hear anything because you accidentally get influenced by stuff and you realize like, oh, it's a great melody, and then you realize, oh shit, yeah, that's record you just heard like 2 months ago. It's just a little, you try to kind of cleanse your palate. Sometimes it's best to listen to things that are total opposite from what you're actually making, because so you just feel like you're creating something, fresh.
Right.
And yeah, for me it's interesting, the like White Blood Cells, the White Stripes. I was never really a big White Stripes fan. I didn't dislike them, but it was just another band that was out there, and then I put that record on one time and it just clicked. I was ready to receive the record then. It was like maybe at another time I just wasn't ready to receive it. And it was kind of the same thing with Dylan. I remember thinking like, you know what? I'm going to really stretch out of my country box. I was really into, Dean Dillon was like, the guy that wrote all the George Strait songs, and not just George Strait. People say that, but he's written a lot of great songs,
yeah,
other than George Strait songs. So I kind of, that was probably my first songwriter that I really just studied his turn of phrase and just how he's structured songs and what he can get away with. But I really wanted to kind of break out of my box, and I thought, well, who's the most opposite of that in my mind? And I was thinking like, well, I should get into like Bob Dylan, because it's less literal. It's more like he's more influenced by like maybe more like a surrealist painter, and so I really dove into those records. And I bought 3 records. I bought Nashville Skyline, Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, Blonde and Blonde, and I brought it home, and they just whizzed over my head. I mean, couldn't have whizzed over my head any faster. And it was like, well, there's a waste of money, and I just didn't get it. And then I moved to LA, and for some reason I just was driving around. I was driving to the studio on Santa Monica and just put the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan record in. And it was just like everything else became silent, and the room just stopped. And I just like, whoa, where's this been? It's just, I just wasn't ready to receive it before. And I've had that experience a couple times. And so I try not to get too dug in on disliking anything, or because you just you don't know, maybe you're just not ready to receive it at that time.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just terrible.
There's always that
Who
chance
knows?
too,
but you got to leave it open.
Yeah. I was going to say on Dylan, what's hard for me to like, I guess, understand is, and I love Bob Dylan, but like, I guess like the part where a lot of older artists where I feel like you're around my age. So like we've come into a point, especially in our 20s, where you just have access to everything. Right. So, in a way, like when you're given Dylan, like, hey, listen to Bob Dylan, you're kind of like given an entire catalog of music, 40 records, and you don't know what like the difference between these eras or anything like that. And that can be like so intimidating of going, listen to Bob Dylan, and maybe you listen to like a greatest hits, and these songs are being plucked every 4 or 5 years, or, you know what I mean? Maybe the range is like a 20-year span. And that's a long time to, try and say, maybe this guy is like the same person at the same, you know what I mean? It's very like, that's what I guess I'm kind of pointing out with Dylan.
No, that's a great point. How songs can be received depending on the cultural significance at the time of the song. Mm-hmm. It's like when I'm here, like Sub Mediterranean Homesick Blues, when he says like, don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. Like we hear that and we're just like, oh, that's a funny line about a weatherman. It's like, on the TV, in front of a green screen telling what the weather is. But he's most likely referring to a group called the Weatherman.
Yeah.
Which was a different thing. Of his time, it was like an organization, that had their agenda, and so it was like these things change depending on when you hear them. And one of the reasons I love Dylan's songs so much is because I think, people brand him oftentimes as a, protest singer or his songs are very political, but to me, they really, and just, I think every songwriter, at least, I mean, people can do whatever they want. They can write, highly political driven songs if they want to. They can express themselves how they want. But to me, a great song should just transcend politics. It should not, kind of like relegate itself to like the lower rung of society and politics. It should just be like, let's just like, why would you write about politics when you can write about changing the world? And so if you listen to a song like The Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, some people might say, oh, that's about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and rain coming down, just like, missiles and, it's just terrible, tumultuous times. But that song's, it's biblical. It could be just about something someone's going through. It could be someone that's worried they're going to lose their job because they're going to pay for something they've done. It could be, it's just, it's a song that's much bigger than just one kind of time in politics. And I think to me, about the only political song that I would say, like, well, that's an overtly political song, would be Masters of War, and it's pretty kind of speaks out. Mm-hmm. But even within that, these songs are all timeless. He's not really mentioning who he's talking about. That's why a lot of these Dylan songs resonate. Every decade they can apply it to something else. And I just think that songs, it's like you shouldn't think so little of a song just to say, let's just write a political song. It should just be like, let's just write a great song that brings people together and can ascend to something greater than just a ditty or something that you can just kind of hang a certain agenda on.
Yeah. It's interesting because like I can, in a lot of ways I can say, some songwriters, like, I guess like, okay, let me backtrack here a little bit. Take someone like Springsteen or Isbell, where
right.
I feel like some of their songs are, you can pick out some political aspects, but they're not political songs. They're not protest songs, or they're not political songs. But just by definition of like writing about just writing about people who are marginalized in
sure.
a way can be about a political aspect. And I think like that's the beauty of a song like, not necessarily even like Born in the USA is pretty obvious, but like there's also a reason why that's played at every damn protest, or not protest, but political rally, and it kind of goes over the head of people. But
just depends on if you play the chorus or the verses.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's what I like about. Maybe a better example is like the song like The River. I feel like The River is a lot of, you can pull out a whole lot of, and maybe it's not political, maybe political is not the right word to use for this, but like since he is talking about the economy crashing, and he's talking about all these horrible things that have happened in their lives that have kind of put stress on his marriage and all that kind of stuff. That's what I love hearing in a political song, if you will, because I feel like he's tapping into like real situations and real people, and sometimes that political aspect or like the climate can still like you can feel the climate of that song. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you kind of feel like one person's perspective was at a certain time and what was going on, and you can have a perspective, and it's probably like further enhanced by the time that the song was written, or the time the song was performed, right? Because it could have been written who knows when. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's something that like, I believe that like songs should bring people together, and at least that's what I aspire to do. When I'm writing a song, I don't see like, well, which political party am I going to write this one for? I just try to write a great song, and I hope that, because for one thing, if you really just set out and just say, I'm going to speak to these people, that's it. It's you preach to the choir. It's like, is that very difficult? Wouldn't you rather, if you've got something that you believe so strongly about, then wouldn't you want to just write something and state it in such a way that people are going to come into it and be open-minded, and maybe you are going to inspire them to, do something positive? It just seems like it's just too easy to just kind of come write a song that you already know right from the get-go, just in the title, you're going to alienate half the people that probably want to actually hear the song more than the other people. Mm-hmm. So I think it's tricky, and my songs are apolitical. I just write songs. I like anybody else, I have political opinions, but when it comes to how I express them, I'm just kind of in the none of your damn business camp, you know. I just write songs, and you know, I just want everyone to hear them, and I hope that they resonate, and I hope that like the songs mean something to people, and that you know, when I leave this earth someday, then those songs will have made a positive impact. You know, that's what I hope, and I take it very seriously, that trying to do something important with these songs. Not to say I won't write a song that's just purely just something to like, you know, forget about everything. I think those songs are great too. You know, it's interesting. This taught me a lesson on you know, you'll hear sometimes people will mention an artist, you know, it's just kind of a common thing. They don't really mean it, but they'll be like, oh yeah, I hate that guy, you know, and they don't really mean they hate the person, because if they knew the person, like I'll hear someone say like, you know, oh, I hate Luke Bryan or something. And it's like, well, do you know Luke Bryan? You know, because I've heard he's a really great guy, and like he's a really giving, caring, great person. And it's like, well, I mean, I hate his music. And say, well, then that's fair. You can say you hate his music if you don't like it, you know, but to hate the person is a whole different thing. Because, you know, there's certain ice creams that I just hate, you know, and so I get it. People can like it, and there's people I'm sure that hate what I do, you know, but that's fine. I don't get offended by that, because why would I demand that somebody, you know, like a different flavored ice cream than they like? You know, it's just all subjective. So that's fine. But to say you actually hate the person because of a certain song is just kind of silly to me. And I was at the Bluebird Cafe one night, and Paul Overstreet was playing, you know, and just this monster songwriter that he is. And he played this song that he wrote called She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy.
Yeah.
And in that context, with him just playing it with everybody, you know, had a good buzz going, sitting back, listening to these great songwriters. It was an excellent song. It was a funny song. It lightened the mood. So then whenever he dropped the hammer with his next song, it really had even more impact. And so it really taught me something about separating the presentation of a song, or maybe your preconceived notions of the artist that was doing the song, from the actual song itself and what the context of it is. Because if you take a song like that and you try to make it like literally like a sexy song, I don't dig it, you know. But in the context of when he's playing it as a funny song that you'd play around a campfire, and you've had a few in you, it's like, this is great. This is an awesome song, you know. And I never would have thought that. It really just kind of opened up my eyes to presentation, you know, and what songs are supposed to do. And sometimes songs are just supposed to be something that give you a little bit of a relief, and sometimes they're just there on an album to offer that comic relief. So then whenever that heavy ballad comes after that, it just makes that ballad just all the more powerful. You know, there's purposes for these songs too. It's just that nowadays, the songs, all you're getting are the novelty songs. You're not getting hardly any of the other. And that's kind of the problem. You know, I mean, John Deere Green, you know, that's a great 90s novelty song, you know, but if all you heard was John Deere Green, then you'd kind of go, come on, okay, I get it. You know, but give me something, you know, give me like Ships Don't Come In Now. You know what I mean?
Right. You know,
just on this Joe Diffie kick.
No, I hear you. I mean, going back to the Paul Overstreet, I mean, just for people to give them some context, I mean, he also did, you know, Seeing My Father in Me and stuff like that. So that's actually
hand,
like,
too, didn't he have a co-written on the other hand?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of those Randy Travis songs.
That's one of those things though, where I have used the She Thinks My Tractor Sexy as like an example of like, you know, just because like you think, I guess because like, especially with the songwriter aspect and these songs being cut by other artists, people kind of forget about the person who wrote the song. And so It is like, hey, you know, like this guy or this person can write, you know, a song that you think is quote unquote amazing, great, and then another song that you may think is quote bad, but you know, it's the same person. So like maybe don't like give that song so much shit because maybe you don't understand and you gave it some really great context. I feel like and this is probably just human nature, the whole like, oh, I hate Luke Bryan, or I hate, I guess like the new person to hate is Morgan Wallen because, you know, he cut a Jason Isbell song. And we have a problem projecting like what we think a person is just based off of their songs or like based off of their image or, what kind of music they play, what kind of stage they play, who they play, like who they play with, rather. And I feel like that's such a weird thing because, for me, like I'm able to, it goes back to like, I think like we always like romanticize all of our favorite people so much as being like, if you're a songwriter, you're supposed to be like, living poor and you're supposed to be living real. Let's go back to the real.
You mean Johnny Cash really didn't shoot a man in Reno just to watch him die?
And sometimes
imposter.
Yeah. And it's like, man, like, these people, like, you tap into these characters, right? Like you create these images, these personas for these songs, for these feelings. And, sometimes it's like and I'm sure you've felt this too, is like, you play country music and it's rocking, and maybe you have some references to drinking and stuff. So then after the show, you do get like the 10 guys who want to buy you a shot, and then maybe you're not outlaw because you can't take those 10 shots or whatever.
It is a strange thing. When I there was a time when I was pretty straight edge. I didn't drink much at all. I made up for that, but there was a time when I didn't. And so when I started playing music, there's this certain thing where when you're playing, 4 or 5 nights a week, and every night without fail, there's at least 2 or 3 people that come up with a shot in their hand, and they just want to tell you how much they dig what you're doing, and let's do a shot together, And even if you just take those shots, those just kind of courteous shots, you realize that, like, I went from someone that really doesn't drink that much to someone that drinks more nights of the week than I don't. And when that's someone that, and when you're drinking that much and you're not even really someone that considers yourself a drinker, I can see how easily people can kind of slip into something where they lose it. They lose that grip on like in self-control, and particularly if they're kind of like have a disposition where it's a little bit easier for them to kind of get hooked on something like that. And so I've seen it happen with friends, and it's just kind of it's a common reoccurring thing. And it's different. It's not just it's a unique pressure you have as a touring musician, to just say no to that one shot. And it's not really even because you think that it's going to be, that you won't look cool or live up to some sort of image. But a lot of times you're thinking like, yeah, I'll do a shot. Let's do it. You're feeling good, show went well. And it's just an easy, slippery slope. And it's one that I don't think people think about too much. And then I hate it whenever people say like, hey, I'm done with the stuff. I'm no more sauce for me. And then for people to actually like think of them like, well, their songs are better when they drank or whatever. It's just like, and you said that you cared about that artist, I don't know. It's a strange thing. It's something that people don't talk about too much. But it's rampant. Just that type of temptation and that issue that people will have to deal with. Now this is something that I want to be clear when it comes to like playing music for a living. Beats the hell out of going to a job you hate every day. Right. So if this is like as bad as it gets, I mean, fortunately for me, this is just such a minor thing. I even feel like kind of even like if I were to even complain that like, oh man, what a drag. People are trying to buy me drinks, it's just like, I feel pretty lame, but it's like for some people though, it's a lot harder temptation. It can turn into things a lot worse. But yeah, it's a tough one.
No, I totally understand. I feel like sometimes it can sound like I'm a pessimist or like I just nitpick things to death. But like that's not even like if I didn't love it, then I wouldn't nitpick it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like this is way more fun and way more, I guess, in a lot of ways rewarding, right? I guess I always go back to, and this can apply to being a musician probably more so than being a freelance journalist. But I said,
do you play as well?
No, I don't play anything at all. But the one thing that's really great about being a writer is that, any night can be Saturday night. And what I mean by that is like, hey, if I want to, I don't have to like get up at 8 the next morning to start writing about something, right? Or going to work. So that great show that's happening on a Tuesday. Yeah, let's go do that. But then also at the same time, any night can be Saturday night, and
Yeah.
you can get pressured into, not necessarily even pressured, but like it's like you said, the slope is very slippery, and if you're not paying attention, you can fall down the slope, and then, you know, you've wasted, you know, a long time of your life. And I've never really had a problem, but like there's been times where I'm like, man, I just wasted this entire week.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very, very easy to do. Now, I'm not
a lot
not
easier to
anybody.
waste a week when you're stoned all week. I will say that.
Yeah.
When time is just kind of like, what day is it? What time is it? You know, but alcohol could do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like any vice.
This episode is in part brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. While Blue Light is still closed due to the pandemic, there is a way to help A, support Blue Light, and B, get a sense of that normalcy by visiting bluelightlubbock.com, clicking on the merch tab, and getting some koozies, a vast array of t-shirts and caps, and yes, even a Blue Light flag. While it is such a bummer that live music is still on hold right now, I'm telling you, by getting some Blue Light Live merch, you're going to feel better. It just feels better wearing a t-shirt and ball cap and helping support your favorite bar. Again, that's bluelightlubbock.com. Click on the merch tab, get some merch. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, I want to go back to the record. You know, you've mentioned a lot of different artists, and I feel like you can hear little hints of those people. The song I want to go back to is Sparklin Burnin Fuse, because I feel like that song, the first time I heard it, it's one of those songs where I was like, it broke me from just listening to the record. And what I mean by that is, like, I had the record on, and typically what I do is I'll put a record on and start doing other things the first time I hear it, just to have it in and get kind of familiar. But that record that song, when it came on, I was like, whoa, like, what is this? Wait, what is this song right here? You know, this can't be from now. Like, it felt like there's this timelessness to it that felt, I guess like the comparison I was going through was, it feels like a very much like something that George Jones would have done, but then also at the same time, it felt like something from the Inside Llewellyn Davis soundtrack or something like that era as well.
Go on. I like what you're saying. Keep going. No, man. Thank you. It's funny. I watched that Llewellyn Davis movie just 2 nights ago. Again, like, for some reason, I just was like, you know, actually, I just dropped in the studio and did an acoustic record. And so beforehand, it's a, you know, a very folk record. And so I was like, I'm going to put this movie on, just kind of get a little inspiration. We were doing a 2-inch tape. And so it was kind of, let's you know, that movie takes place in like 1963 or 4 or whatever. And so we're kind of vibing on that a little bit, but man, yeah, thanks. That song is just, you know, I mean, I consider all my songs pretty autobiographical, even the ones where I'm writing from third person. There's always sense of like, I think that in a lot of ways, all great art is autobiography. And so, yeah, that was definitely one that I don't believe that I could have written. I mean, there's ways you can empathize with other people and write about how you think maybe like in a bluegrass song, how maybe, what would it be like if someone got so enraged with like jealousy that they killed their lover? You know, you can imagine, well, I felt jealousy or I felt rage or whatever, so maybe I'll just pretend like it's that. But it was Sparklin Burnin Fuse. It was a song that I really felt like I don't think I would have had the perspective had there not been some, you know, some different times of, you know, jadedness or being bitter about something, or kind of being able to see really what's going on behind the scenes when you thought they were one way, and you realize that, like, in a lot of ways that Hunter S. Thompson quote is right about the music industry. And so it's like, you know, but it's also trying to write it in a way that, you know, there's a sense of like, well, yeah, this sucks, or this was a tough time, but still trying to write your way out of it in terms of like, yeah, but you know what? Life ain't so bad. How am I going to fix it? At least I learned from it. So there's, in that sense, there's no mistakes. They're just things that you just like on your journey towards, you know, becoming a better person or a better artist, that you just got to go through. And so you should be thankful for those times, you know? And so that song just kind of was another one that came pretty quick, but I felt like it kind of took years to write. But then when I kind of sat down and it kind of fell together, it just kind of fell together really quickly. So.
Yeah. Like it just, there's some, I don't know, like it feels like you're very, I don't know. And this goes back to the whole projecting thing, where like, you know, it feels like you're speaking directly to specific people. And the reason I feel like that is because it felt like you were talking directly to me. And
oh, awesome.
And I'm like, man, that like there's I'm paraphrasing here, but there's like those lines about, you know, you where you're saying I dreamt of you, so you dreamt of me, or something like that, or what is that line?
Oh, I think it's I thought you to existence. Yeah. You must have thought me too. I think.
Yeah. That like that. I was like, man, that feels like, and that goes back to it felt like that's such a pure line that I was like, man, how has that not been said before?
Well, thank you, man. Well, I mean, if you were the only person that it hit that way, then the song was worth writing.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
I mean, hopefully there's more, but that's really why I try to sit down and write a song. Is I'm really not thinking. I just hope that one person really gets something out of it. And you hope that, you know, it's more than one. But it'd be really bad to write a song and literally resonated with not a single soul. You know, what a waste of time and money that would be, huh?
Well, is that always like the fear before playing a song that's new? Is that like, oh, is somebody not going to get this, or?
No, not really. I'm kind of always, I write a lot of songs. And so I think you just got to at some point realize that like, you're going to write songs that even if you think they're, you know, the next He Stopped Loving Her Today, they could be totally terrible. So I just figured like, well, I just need to write a lot of songs and then kind of put them out there into the world. And it's just like, you know, they're you know, sometimes people say like, you know, it's weird as a songwriter because a lot of times your newest thing is your favorite song. And sometimes, and you'll hear people play like, man, I feel like this song just like, I didn't write this. It's like God gave me this song, and they play it for you. And it's so awful. And you're like, God must have just not wanted that song because it's terrible, you know? And so, but you've kind of got to feel like there's a purpose and something important. I believe in order to do anything great, from a songwriting standpoint, you've got to believe that the song could be the best thing you've ever written, or it can be powerful. And so as long as you have that, and then you put it out there, and if it doesn't work, well, write another one. You're a songwriter, you know?
Yeah. I totally believe in the whole, like, sometimes you got to write something that maybe you don't like, or that doesn't resonate, or never gets cut to get onto the next song. I 100% agree, or believe in that theory of like, that's how a lot of songwriters are, is that, yeah, this may not work, but like, let's finish this out, or let's like go through the process because it may lead us to something else that's better, or to the next idea, or whatever the case.
It's a constant struggle between your right and your left brain. Cause you've got, you know, one side is being ultra critical of everything you do and telling you that everything is not quite good enough, you know, and then you've got the other side of your brain that's just like, man, let's just like paint on the walls. Why just limit ourselves to canvas? Let's just paint on the ceiling, the floor, and the walls. And so you've got to find that balance and when to know to switch from one to the other, so you can kind of keep it on the canvas, but still stay pretty flexible in terms of like what paint you apply to it. And it's like, so I think that's really the biggest challenge in terms of like keeping your output up. I mean, I could tell someone, or if someone told me like, hey, can you write 100 songs today? It's like, yes, I can write 100 songs today. I know I can do it. What will you give me I can give you like, I'll give you $1 million. It's like, give me a pen, give me some paper. I will write 100 terrible songs.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to my mind, the first 4 lines will be the verse, then I'll write it. They won't make any sense, but you'll have your 100 songs, and I'll get paid. So it's just like, you can do it. You can just write songs like that. But sometimes you actually have to approach it almost like that. You have to tell yourself, look, I'm going to write whatever I write, just like I have to turn in a homework assignment. You know, whenever you have to do homework and you have to write like an essay, and you're like, this is the last thing I want to do. So you're literally just like counting the words until you're at the end of the page and just go, okay, well, I'll turn this in just so I can get like the minimum grade so I don't have to do it. And songwriting, in a sense, can be like that. if you just got to make yourself just like finish something.
Yeah.
Just finish something. And the weird thing is a lot of times, and if you've done it enough, a lot of times those songs you look at the next day and you go, shit, this ain't that bad. Maybe if I tweak this or tweak this, it's like, oh man, and this is an up tempo. I bet this would be great with the band, and then you work that song up and you just think it's going to be just something that you play and see how it goes. And people come up and they go, man, this is the best song you've ever written. It's crazy how that happens. We have to kind of lose perspective and just keep creating. And I think the only way that you're going to get those songs that just feel like they wrote themselves is if you're just willing to just like keep creating. And that's why there's so much of so many people's early work is a lot of people's favorites, just because I think they are coming from that place where they're not thinking quite as much about craft. They're just like writing songs because they want to show people, hey, look, I wrote a song. What do you think?
Yeah. Like I've been able to see some co-writes like in person and be in the room. And I think like the big thing that I came away with that is that, like there's a lot more of the, let's just write this down as filler. And if we come back and if we are able to beat that line later, we'll beat it. But don't be scared to just write this down just because you don't want to sound stupid.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like you have to allow yourself to say this and not be scared to sound stupid in front of someone else or in front of yourself or whatever the case.
Totally true. And it's funny you say that because like I say this at the beginning, like I don't like co-writing. I write with like, there's probably like 2 or 3 people that I write with. I write a lot of songs with Cody Jinks and I write songs with Alex Williams and other than that, there's like, it'll be a song every now and then when I can see certain friends, but I kind of think that like songs with too many writers on them is kind of why I think the songs are really lacking these days in like a lot of genres. But the first thing I say if I'm writing with someone is like, look, there's going to be times where like, just in order to keep the song going, so we're not staring at a blank page. Cause that's the worst thing is when you're just sitting there going like, well, when we write that great first line, then we'll keep going. And it's just a total wrong approach because you're already into your critical part of your brain. And I'll always say like, let's just write stuff that's from a syllable standpoint or melodic standpoint can just get us to the chorus because we know what we want to say. So let's just do that and then we'll write it backwards or we got to have something, or we know we need a bridge here and we love this melody. So let's just sing whatever, and it's like what's the McCartney song where he's saying scrambled eggs all the time? I don't know, but he played the song for everybody. He ended up being one of those, I don't know, one of your listeners will know what it is, but it's that thing. But surprisingly enough, a lot of times you tell that to people and they can't get it out of their head. Like, no, I can't put that down. Like, you're going to have to listen to me. This isn't going to be the line. We're not going to say scrambled eggs on this. I guarantee you. Mm-hmm. This song's about like, something. But people have a hard time getting out of their head because they don't trust the process enough.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of co-writing. I just feel like it's, none of my favorite novels are co-written. It's just a lot of, there's a time and place for it and some great songs have been written. But I was talking to he's passed now, but a guy named Kim Williams. He wrote all these great Garlic songs. He wrote 3 Wooden Crosses for Brandy Travis and just one of my heroes. And I was talking to him. We were drinking moonshine there at his kitchen table with him and his daughter Amanda, who's a great songwriter too. And I was asking about these old songwriters that I would just study I was like a liner note junkie, and I would go study the songs and see like, oh, this is what makes a Jim Lauderdale song sound like a Jim Lauderdale song or a Dean Dillon song or Bob McDill. And I was asking about this one particular writer who I won't say his name because I don't know, maybe he's a nice guy, but I said, what about this guy? I noticed he's on a lot of these songs with Dean Dillon, and it'll be like Hank Cochran, like these 2 obvious legends, and then there's this other guy. And he was like, hell, he just brought the cocaine, He was just in the room. He can't write his way out of a paper bag. And so you realize like, oh, those guys have always been there, because now it's a lot of that process is very political. And like when you said earlier, like you were in the room during the co-write, like in Nashville nowadays, you'd get a write on that song, just the in the room credit, And it's gotten very, that's why you're seeing so many writers. It's a very political process. And like, well, if so-and-so's on the song, he's got this in where he can get the song to this artist. And so there's a lot of that going on, but you realize it's kind of always been that way. It's just, there's certain people that are there I was at another write one time, not to get off too much on a tangent, but and I was writing with a guy at one of the publishing houses in town, one of the big publishing houses, and the guy came in to just kind of see how it's going, and he's like, "Yeah, man, it's crazy these days. There's a lot of really good track guys, which is just guys that bring like a little Logic loop and they leave the room. People write with it. I haven't, but and then there's a lot of good like hype guys, but there's not a lot of good lyric guys." And I stopped him for a second. I go, wait, hold on. What's hype guy? And he goes, "Oh, like a hype guy, like a guy that kind of keeps everyone's spirits up and kind of keeps it positive and keeps things moving along." And I was thinking like, man, this is not the right town for me.
Yeah.
It was just a strange thing. It was a literal thing. I felt like it was a Saturday Night Live skit or something. And so it's just a whole different way of looking at things. I mean, if you're at an advertising agency, it's a whole team that works on songs. And if you're writing a modern country song, it's probably a whole team that's working on these songs to an extent. And not that these guys aren't great. That's the sad thing, is a lot of these writers that you see on a lot of these awful songs, if you actually heard their
good stuff
that never gets played, they've got great stuff. They probably just got to the point where they moved to town. They had big dreams of being the next Dean Dillon. And then after a while, they just did not get any cuts for years and years and years. And they played the game and they kept trying to write their great songs. And then sooner or later, they just said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to be a failure. And they just started giving and giving and giving. And then they started having success, and then it just snowballs into that thing. And it just happens all the time. That's why it's even hard to I have a lot of respect for a lot of these people even people that are writing a lot of these awful songs, because I know that, like, well, hey, in that position, at some point they just said, I got to pay my bills or I got to leave town,
Right.
It's a weird thing. The artist in me is pretty, is one thing, and is very get kind of like snobby towards that thing. And then but I don't know what that person's perspective is, or, what led them to do that. Of writing those types of songs. Well, I kind of do know what led them to do that, but it's like, but that's why things are not usually as simple as they appear. And that's why with my record, I just wanted to say, well, look, if you want to listen to kind of that thing, it's there, but if you want to hear things that, like we're talking about, like that 90s country type stuff, it's like I made a record for you.
Yeah. Like that's, I 100% agree. Like it kind of goes back to that. Like, these people aren't stupid who are writing these songs. I mean, I'm sure there's a nut in every bunch and all that kind of stuff. But they can be writing these bad songs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's all they have in their bag.
No, for sure not.
Same
thing with artists too, actually.
Yeah. Well, to me, like what's funny or what's so interesting about the co-writing stuff is that there's like all these little things that I guess like there's a lot of elephants in the room when it comes to the whole co-writing world. And I'm like, why don't you guys talk about this stuff? And and like one of those little things that you'll hear somebody say is like the best co-writes are 3, simply because like you can always pit 2 against 1 kind of deal. Like it moves the song along, and like as far as, oh, I don't like this line, and this line's real bad. Well, if the other 2 guys like it, it's kind of staying, And so like that can help move a song forward. You know what I mean? So
and I think depending on what you're writing for, I think that could even be a valid thing. I can count on like one finger the times I've had a 3-way write. And so it's like I don't really have much perspective on that. But I could totally see if you were trying. But think about it: if someone came to you and said, like, "Hey, we need to write a commercial for, Budweiser," then 3 heads in that room might be better, because if 2 people think the line's fine, you might just say, "Cool, moving on." It's not like you're saying, like, "Hey, we need to write a song that's going to like reach in and rip someone's heart out, and then be a catharsis for them." It's like, it's a different thing when you're writing. But when you're really purely writing on craft, or you're writing on just to kind of suit a certain very specific thing, and who cares if the line's that good, honestly, if it gets cut. And that's what I just find is kind of a big problem with what's going on. That's why I was trying to express with my record. And it's like the song "The Country" in particular was kind of, that's the whole, like, I miss you like the country radio don't play no more. That was kind of the whole essence of the whole thing, without going out and calling out names and trying to just get specific because I don't know people.
Right.
You know, another thing too that's funny, Thomas, is like, how many times have you thought someone's music was just awful? And then you meet them and they're like really cool.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? He's got that one good song's pretty good. It's okay. It's tolerable. And then you start hanging out with them, drinking beer, and you're like, you know what? He's got a few good songs. And then pretty soon you're like, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, it's your perspective changes when and you're willing to forgive certain things if people are, or if you see their perspective. I mean, maybe the certain type of song is what that person is the only thing they can really do. So why would you fault them for not being successful at something?
Yeah.
Just because it might be in contrast to what you feel like an industry should be. You know, It's a very complicated thing.
Yeah. I've got a buddy, a songwriting buddy. I won't name him right now, but you know, he's very, you could say he's real snarky and real kind of,
I know
old school, and or not old school necessarily, but like he's very much in the speaks his mind, and like, but one of the things he'll say is like if you ask him about somebody, and you can read between the lines here, and he's like, oh, that guy, he's a good hang. He doesn't say anything about the songwriting but that guy's a good hang. Yeah.
So how do you say something if you're not going to say something good? Don't say anything at all. Type thing,
yeah.
You know?
Going back to the co-write on the record, though, it's the only co-write. You mentioned Cody Jinks earlier, The Raven and the Dove. You guys wrote that song together. Where did that stem from? Where'd you guys kick that song off?
Yeah, so Cody was getting ready to go. He does his records down at Sonic Ranch in way South Texas, and so he was going to go to the studio, I think, a month later. And I'd written a song with him called "Lifers" for his record before. And so before he's going to go down to Sonic Ranch again, we got together at his house in Texas and, just hanging out, writing songs like we always do. And I noticed that he's got a lot of tattoos, but he's got on one of his hands, he's got a raven, and on the other one, he's got a dove. And I started asking him about what that meant. I was like, and he just, kind of just talked about it. And he told me about it and just kind of the whole like light and dark thing. And he's a real deep guy. He's well read. He's a really smart. Jinx is really smart, and so he does things because there's intention behind what he does. And so then whenever we kind of got that started, I think it was the day I was like leaving town, but I just kind of wanted to. I don't think I was even much planning on really writing anything that day, but then whenever we went to Sonic Ranch, I went down there while they were recording it. And we went in this little adobe, right next to the adobe room, there's this little place everyone stays. And we just sat at that table and we wrote 2 songs in about an hour. And one of them, the first one was The Raven and the Dove. It just went down really fast. We wrote that and we wrote a song called The Wanting in like less than an hour, I think. They just fell out. And then once he recorded, his version is very much like a kind of a drunken Sunday morning type song, and mine is his is probably more like the drunken Saturday night. Mine's more like the hungover Sunday morning version because we both cut the song. But I'm really proud of that. Right? And sometimes when I'm co-writing, especially in that situation, we were writing for his record more so. So I was really trying to lean on, like his version. Is I get my singing from my mama. I get the fight from my old man because his mom's a really good singer. My mom doesn't sing as good as his mom. So my version is I get my dreaming from my mom. I get the fight from my old man. Mm-hmm. So there's one of those songs where it's where I felt it just as much as he felt the song. And so that's always cool when you get a co-write that, a lot of times a co-write feels like it's kind of one person's song more than the others because of the content or where it came from. But this was really just one that really just felt like I really wanted to cut it too. And so, we put that down. I'm just real proud of it.
Yeah.
And then got Mickey Raphael and John Graboff to play on it. Mickey, is Willie's harmonica player.
Right.
And John Graboff plays with Zephaniah O'Hara, some monster steel player. He's playing the Cardinals. And so just I'm really happy with the cut we got on it too.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up was because that's what I find fascinating when there's a co-write that 2 artists will cut, and it's the same song, but then you can feel like the differences, and like you kind of laid out the differences perfectly, and like the connection, but also like, what I find interesting is like how I'm assuming you kind of heard that version in your head, and he heard that
Yes.
version in his head, and y'all were writing the song at the same time, and it just kind of happened.
Well, the way we wrote
it's
it was actually was pretty true to my version of it.
Oh, okay.
It sounded like a very like a Don Williams thing. It was like very like take time, let the song just take its time to build and be its thing. But the way he cuts records is very just like in the moment. They go in there. I think they cut that song that night, actually. I mean, it was literally like the song was written and recorded in like less than like 8 hours. That's the way he does a lot of his records. It's real cool. It's a very like Waylon Jennings type approach to like making records. It's just like, here it is, let's do it, let's record it. And as soon as they get something that they that feels good to them, they move on. And that's probably why he, recorded 2 records in like 2 weeks last time, because they're mowing through stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's a really cool kind of like newness you get on things. I don't even think that he likes to like know his songs inside and out before he goes in the studio. He likes that like where they feel like we're just written like right before the session. And there's a coolness that you get that you don't hear. That's one of the cool things that I think that you probably the same way is like there used to be kind of a fresh feeling to songs where they didn't feel, Alan Jackson, I think I just read today, went in and recorded Don't Rock the Jukebox, Someday, and like one other song, like literally in the same session, and they were all like #1 hits. And it's just it's that kind of spirit, I think is kind of lacking.
Yeah. I love like when someone is working on a record and it's, everything's thought out and meticulous, and it takes, I guess the process of making that record may take a while, and then, they release it and it's perfect and all those kind of things. But also I do love when someone makes like the like kind of the Jinx thing. It feels like those are like snapshot records. You know what I mean?
Totally. Like a Dylan thing, almost like in the like mid-60s Dylan.
This doesn't have to, we don't have to play this song like this forever either. I think some people get too wrapped up into that, but like these songs, this record is right now. And if we're making it right now, like this is what it is. This is this span of time. And, these songs may be bigger than that, and they can morph and all that kind of stuff. But I think sometimes like we can overanalyze, trying to make something perfect and like make it its final product, its final version in that moment.
For sure, the same thing that can kind of kill a good song while you're writing, it can kill a record too if the wrong part of your brain overtakes. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's those little imperfections and flaws that in the human elements that really make a record special. And it's like you could say a perfect record is neither. And so it's kind of like one of those things. But he does a really good job of just capturing that moment. Like my record, the bulk of the tracks we tracked them in 2 days, and the guys that heard the songs like the day before, we got together just to run through the changes and just went in the studio and slammed them out. I think we recorded 10. I think of those, 6 or 7 ended up being keeper takes, and then I recorded a couple more songs in Dallas, and that was and the other takes that didn't end up making the record are like cool, and I may put them out at some point. It was just a matter of once they were all done and seeing them as a collection, a song that may not have fit in as well as the other ones did. Or I added Pancho and Lefty at the end after I kind of have envisioning this idea do kind of like a Highwayman type thing with like multiple singers. And like, actually I was out in Vegas. I got to open about 2 weeks worth of shows. Willie Nelson was doing a residency at the Venetian. And so I went out there and opened all those shows solo acoustic. And while I was out there, I met this guy named Brian Newman, and he's Lady Gaga's band leader. She was doing her thing at, I think, the MGM, like this huge residency thing. Mm-hmm. And he was hosting a jazz night at this place called the After Dark at the hotel. He's called the After Dark at the Hotel Nomad. And so I go, and he invited me out. He came to the show and then invited me to come sit in with his jazz band. And so I go there, and it's just like 80 cap, just awesome, like swanky, old Vegas looking place. And like the walls were lined with like I think it was Rockefeller's old library. So there were all these books, and they were all color coordinated. So all the walls had different like colors, but just because of the spines of the books were that color.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the most rad like venue ever. And so I get up there and play with Brian's band. He's a trumpet player, and it was like this old jazz band, no electric guitars. And I do like Folsom Prison Blues, and I did like Milk Cow Blues, like some just old standard swing and like in country songs. And man, I just loved it. It was so great. Such a different experience hearing horns on these things. So whenever it came time to record Pancho, and I felt like if I'm going to record it, I've got to do it unlike any other version, because then what's the point, you know?
Right.
I called him, asked if he'd play trumpets on it, and he did. And I think it's probably my favorite part of the whole record is his trumpet solo on it. It just really gave it this, like, you know, South Texas, you know, Mexican flair to it.
Yeah. It's
almost a mariachi vibe. And
yeah,
it just jumped out.
Kind of like the same way, well, like Ring of Fire, like those kind of,
yeah,
like that's the thing that pulled me into that was like, oh yeah, that feels like that. And so many people are so like, oh, there's no place for horns in country music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, no, they've been doing it
seemed
forever.
Like it fit.
Yeah. Well, how did you mentioned like the whole, you kind of envisioned it in the Highwayman vibe. How did you go out and decide like on, hey, let's do it that way? And then also obviously, you know, it's with Cauthen and Jinks and Elizabeth Cook. How did it go that route with those?
Well, I was around Christmas time. Jinks was doing an acoustic kind of Christmas show in the round at the Bomb Factory in Dallas. And so it was me and Cauthen and Cody and Ward and Josh Morningstar. And so I said, hey, let's do Pancho and Lefty. We should just all take a verse and do it. Just because I knew we'd all know it. And we did it, and it was just a blast. It just felt cool. And I was thinking, you know, why hasn't there been a version where there's like more than just I mean, even on Willie's version, like Haggard only takes one verse, you know? And so there's not really that type of version. I thought this is really interesting here, different perspective, because it's almost like you've got different people like in a movie stepping in and playing. It's almost like Pulp Fiction or something, you know, where it's just like there's these different stories and characters going at the same time, but it's all one linear theme, but with a total disarray of characters, right? And then I got to thinking, like, well, how can I take it even further where it never lets up and kind of always keeps your interest? And so it's like, well, there's two solos in the song, so I was asking Mickey if he'll come play harmonica on the track, and he didn't play on Willie's original version, even though he's played with Willie since in the beginning of music. And then Brian for the other part. So it was just kind of like every section of the song is kind of like its own little mini moment, you know, because it's such a, you know, it's a Townes Van Zandt song, so it's just kind of it's a no-brainer from a material standpoint. The only challenge was going to be like, well, if you're going to do this, then you need to do it unlike any other version of this song.
Right.
And so when that happened and taking a more cinematic approach, and I recorded that one in Dallas and produced it with my buddy Casey DiOrio, and he's got a real Mellotron, and which is, you know, an old, you may know, but like if your listeners don't, it's like it's a very early keyboard where it actually triggers tape samples of like real played strings and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, I got to play that on this song. We got to make this really like a movie. And so I ended up playing this Mellotron there, and it's real wanky and temperamental and just real interesting, but it kind of sounds like an old movie when you play the string setting. And so it just all kind of fell together and became just a real kind of unique thing. I'm real proud of it, how it turned out.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those cinematic textures to it, you know?
Yeah.
Another thing that I really, let's talk about the other cover, She Talks to Angels, because like, when I first heard that, I was like, man, that reminds me of when Dwight Yoakam did Prince's Purple Rain. And,
That's awesome.
And then, of course, you know, I'm reading the background on the record and stuff, and it makes perfect sense on why that would maybe be the case.
Yeah, it's funny because like if I just like picked up a record and turned it over and saw She Talks to Angels, my first reaction would probably be to roll my eyes. Just like, you're not going to do it any better than the Black Crowes did it. There's no reason to do that song. There's one version of it. That's it. But I just kind of had this idea, like I needed this kind of hillbilly bluegrass type song on the record. And so I kind of had an idea to do that song in that way. Cause I thought, well, if you do that, then you're not really doing yeah, you're doing the song, but it's so different. You can't really even compare the versions. It's not like me trying to do, it's like when people kind of go try to sing Tennessee Whiskey, like Stapleton, you're like, what are you doing? Just stop, It's just, and so it's like but it was like, wait, if I do, she talks to angels in this bluegrass way, then it's like, it just showcases how great the song is and how cool the words are. And it works perfectly as a bluegrass song. And so, yeah, it came together real cool. And then when you get Elizabeth Cook singing on anything, she makes everything sound better. And so it just fell together. It was just a really cool kind of thing that happened. That's kind of my approach to covers, no matter what. If you're going to do a cover, I just feel like you've got to do them as if they're either indiscernible from any other version or just so different that you can't really compare them. I did a cover of Waymore's Blues, which another song has been covered a ton. But we did it almost like Jack White would do it or something. It's very just like fuzzed out, like acid trip version of it. And so it's it's not a country version. So like people say, they say, hey, that ain't country. It's like, no, it's definitely not. You're exactly right. I know what country is, and that's not a country version of it. You're right.
Yeah.
It was just a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But that's just my approach to covers.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, like if it was like the same way the original was done, well, why not just go listen to the original?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why do I just want to do like a more vanilla version of Waylon's version? It's just never going to be. It's like a poor man's version. Yeah. And so that's just been always my approach to it. Now, the reason that people will do that sometimes is because it's an easy, like, no one's going to not like it. Yeah. Sure, they won't like it as much as Waylon's, but they still like it. And so it's kind of an easy, to me, it's lazy. I don't mean that in like an insulting way, and it's different when people are doing things live. But to me, if you're going to put a song on a record, it's like, man, Waylon would have made it his own. He wouldn't have just tried to cover Hank Williams' song exactly like Hank Williams. He wrote a song about it. Don't think Hank done it this way. So it's just like, it's been weird. That's been a funny journey with that song because there are a lot of people, like I consider myself a purist when it comes to country music, and there's a lot of purists that are just like, it kind of ruffled some feathers, and it's like, hey, it ain't a country song. It's not supposed to be. Don't look at it that way, I mean, shit, the song's got blues in its title too, for one. But yeah, so I just always my approach with covers. So it's just like when it comes to putting covers on records in particular, they've got to really suit a purpose and kind of a theme, and both the songs thematically, and then for what I needed, like I said, Pancho and Lefty's the gunfighter ballad on the record, and which are always cool, like kind of Marty Robbins, West Texas thing, and She Talks to Angels, being the hillbilly thing, hillbilly bluegrass type vibe. Yeah. It'd be bluegrass, but bluegrass is it's definitely, it's kind of a loose bluegrass, just like hillbilly music,
Yeah, but I know like there's that one guy who's just like, no, it's not bluegrass, that's old time.
Exactly.
Like,
that's why I said that, for that one guy out there. Yeah, for Elmer out there that says it's not bluegrass, that's for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I love. Like those people who are so diehard about like the specifics, like the rules, like it's like the whole Walter Big Lebowski kind of like.
Exactly. Or the guy that hates the Eagles. And I love those people too. I mean, I just don't think it's for me to tell anybody with how they should like or dislike music. I'm going to make the music that I make, and I have a perspective, and I would prefer that people like the records that I make and like what I do. But by definition, if you're an artist, you're not for everybody. I've been fortunate that people have responded really well to the singles we put out, and like fans have been awesome. But you should just try to make the music that you make, and you just hope that people are drawn to it. You're not going to please everyone. It's just a fact, and it's okay too. You can still be friends with people that don't really dig what you do musically.
Right. Exactly. I mean, 100% agree on that, because there's always going to be that one guy. There's one in every crowd.
Well, I might be that one guy to someone else's music.
Course,
I might be the one guy in the crowd. it's like I don't. That's what's so funny is people think that they're like, they come up apologetically. They're like, I didn't care for that cover of Waymore's Blues. I'm like, man, that's totally cool. How you doing tonight?
Yeah,
that's all right. I really it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to be up all night going like, why didn't that guy like my version of that?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter to me. But he's honest, and that's one of the things is like, if you're honest, then why would I fault that?
Right.
I don't like everything either. And a lot of things that a lot of people do like that I don't, doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. Mm-hmm. Although I think I'm usually right all the time.
Yeah.
For the most part, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really dig the new record, and I think like it's, like I said, like you do feel like you're dipping your toes in all these different kinds of American country music, but there is that common thread that kind of pulls it all together, and it doesn't feel like it's like a novelty thing. Like, oh, I'm going to try and do 100 different things just to have those 100 things done. So I really dig the record and all that kind of stuff. So
thanks, man. Yeah. I like with every record, I just really try to, we spend a lot of time on it, really put a lot of care and time into it, and really try to just put out something that is going to resonate with people, and we take chances on every record and really try to just kind of push things and send questions and try to.
Thanks for listening to New Slang. That's it for this episode. Be sure to check out Tennessee Jet's new record, The Country. Check out Desert Door and The Blue Light Live. All right, we'll see y'all next week.